Have you ever just stared at a really long, complicated sentence and felt completely lost? Yeah, we've all been there. Well, today we're going to fix that. We are going to crack the code of English grammar by zeroing in on its most important part, the sentence. By the time we're done, you'll have a simple blueprint to see how any sentence is built. Let's jump in. Okay, right off the bat, let's start with a little puzzle. Take a look at this sentence. On the top of the hills lives a hermit. Now, what's the subject? Your first thought might be, well, it's the hills, right? I mean, it's right there at the beginning. But is that the correct answer? Just hang on to that thought. We're going to circle back to this, and by the end, you'll know the answer for sure. So here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to look at the absolute basic building blocks of language. Then we'll see how those blocks form bigger things like phrases and clauses. After that, we'll get into the main event, the core blueprint of the sentence itself. And finally, we'll put it all into action and solve that hermit puzzle. All right, section 1, the foundation. Before we can really get a handle on a sentence, we gotta appreciate how we even get there. We're starting from the absolute smallest piece of communication and building our way up. When you boil it all down, this is what language is. It's not just a bunch of boring rules and a textbook. It's the tool we use to take an idea from inside our head and share it with someone else. Simple as that. It's all about communication. And this is how that communication gets built. Seriously, think of it like you're building a house. You start with the smallest things, like sounds, which we then represent with letters. We stick letters together to make words. Then we group those words into phrases and clauses. Those are kind of like the rooms and floors, until finally we have a whole complete structure, the sentence. Every single step builds right on top of the last one. Okay, now let's zoom in on those bigger pieces. And honestly, this right here, understanding the difference between a phrase and a clause, is the real secret to getting a grip on grammar. So let's break it down. So first up, we have the phrase. Now, a phrase is just a group of words that make some sense, but it leaves you hanging. It's not a complete thought. And here's the crucial part. It doesn't have a subject and a verb working together. Remember our puzzle sentence, on the top of the hills? That's a perfect phrase. It tells us where, but it doesn't tell us who is doing what. Now a clause. A clause is a huge step up. Why? Because it has both a subject and a verb. That's the engine right there. Sometimes a clause can actually be a full sentence all by itself, and other times it's just one part of a bigger sentence. This side-by-side comparison makes it super clear. Over on the left, the phrase on the table. It just leaves you waiting, right? What's on the table? What's happening? But look at the clause on the right. When I reach Delhi. It has the key ingredients, a subject, I, and a verb, reach. That pairing is what makes all the difference. And that finally brings us to the big one, the sentence. This is the whole shebang. It's a group of words that uses those phrases and clauses, arranges them in a specific structure, and gives you a complete standalone thought. Okay, so what is that specific structure? It's time to pop the hood and really look at the engine of a sentence. This is that core blueprint we've been talking about. And there it is. This is the master key to everything. The simple formula, subject plus verb plus an object or a complement. If you can learn to spot these three parts, you can unlock the meaning of pretty much any sentence you come across. So let's break that down. What's a subject? Well, it's the star of the show. You can think of it as the doer of the action, which is usually pretty easy to find. But here's the more powerful way to think about it. The subject is whatever the sentence is fundamentally about. That second definition is the real key. Next up, the verb. This is the powerhouse, the engine. It's the word that shows the action, like run, think, or give. Or it can show a state of being, like the words is, am, or are. Bottom line, you cannot have a sentence without a verb. It's impossible. And finally, the object. So if the subject is the one doing the action, the object is the one receiving that action. And I'm going to give you a dead simple trick to find it every single time. Just find the verb and then immediately ask what or whom. The answer to that question, that's your object. All right, enough theory. It's time to put these tools to work. We have our blueprint, we have our definitions. Now let's see how this all works on real sentences. And yeah, it's finally time to solve that puzzle from the beginning. And you might be wondering, why does this matter so much? Well, this isn't just some abstract grammar lesson. Being able to break down a sentence like this is a critical skill. It's exactly the kind of knowledge that gets tested in big competitive exams, like the ones for the National Defense Academy. This is practical stuff.
So, here we are, back at our mystery sentence. Now remember our key definition of a subject. It's not always the first thing you read. It's what the sentence is about. So ask yourself that question again. Is the sentence really about the hills? Or is it about someone or something else? And the answer is a hermit. See how it works? Let's apply the logic. Who is doing the action? The hills aren't doing any living. The hermit is the one who lives. So the subject is a hermit and the verb is lives. This is a classic example of how writers can flip the word order around to be more descriptive, but that core subject-verb connection is unbreakable.
Awesome. Okay, let's lock this concept in with one more example. This one's a little different because sometimes a verb can have two things receiving its action. Look at this everyday sentence. She gave me a pen. Let's break it down with our blueprint. Okay, look at how cleanly this breaks down. The subject, the doer, is she. The verb, the action, is gave. Now we ask our two questions. She gave what? A pen. That's our direct object. She gave the pen to whom? To me. That's our indirect object. See? Subject, verb, objects. It's that simple. And that really is the biggest takeaway here. It doesn't matter how long and fancy a sentence gets. It can be loaded with descriptions and extra clauses, but if you can find its core, that simple subject, verb, object structure, you can understand what it's truly saying. It really is your key. So I'll leave you with one last challenge to think about. Check out this sentence. What Tom said at the party surprised everybody. Using what we just learned, ask yourself, what or who did the surprising? The answer might not be just a single word this time. What's the real subject there? Thanks for tuning in.